If you're looking to get into mirrorless photography, you've probably noticed that prices are a little bit higher than they used to be. And if you're even just starting out for the first time and having a look around the market, you've probably noticed that regardless of whether you're looking at Nikon, Sony or Canon, if you want to go down the full frame route, it's not going to be cheap. But there is another way, and I want to suggest that if you buy them used, the Nikon Z6 and Nikon 24-200mm f4 to 6.3 Z-mount lens make a particularly good combination if you want to dip your toes in the mirrorless world without laying down thousands of pounds before you do. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of cropped sensor options across the market, but to me, mirrorless and full frame go together really, really well. And so does this lens and camera combination. The Nikon Z6 was launched in 2018, cost a couple of £1,000, but can now be had on eBay for around £600 to £700, depending on how good your eBay skills are. Similarly, the Nikon 24-200 currently costs around £800, though it's on offer at £700, but you can have it for around £550 or maybe even less if you buy it on eBay at the right time. So together you can spend around £1,200, £1,300 and get an incredibly capable camera and lens combination. Now, you might potentially think that a super zoom like the 24-200 isn't going to be particularly good. But this lens really surprised me. It only weighs 570 grams, but they've managed to cram 19 separate lens elements into this lens, and it is capable of some surprisingly sharp photography across the range, whether you're shooting wide angle or at the telephoto side. Even more impressively, the autofocus is surprisingly fast for this kind of lens, and it has VR built into it as well. Now, given the Z6 has in-body image stabilisation and that can work in conjunction with VR, realistically taking photos down to a sixth of a second or even less is possible even if you don't have the absolute best camera skills. Moreover, this camera is very versatile as well. The 24 megapixel sensor can shoot 4K video up to 30 frames per second. It can even output ProRes video straight out of the box through its HDMI port if you use a separate recorder. There's quite happy shooting 8-bit video internally as well. You have lovely controls on this camera that I've always really enjoyed. Nikon's menu system is particularly simple, but the way they've given you really simple controls, switching over to video mode or photography mode is super simple. You've got controls for all the various things that you might want to change. It is a simple camera to use. And the EVF, so the electronic viewfinder, is particularly nice as well. I really like it on this camera. Yes, it is getting on a bit. However, this is probably the camera that has had the most firmware updates that Nikon's ever given to a camera. We're now on version 3.6. Now, yes, some of those updates have just added lens compatibility updates. However, we've also had various autofocus updates, additions to the menu, changes in how the camera operates. Basically, in the past 5 years, this camera has improved significantly from when it launched. It's pretty similar, in fact, than my Nikon Z6 II, which I'm currently using to film this and which costs significantly more than this camera. So much so that I'm not sure there's a huge amount of call for buying the Z6 II unless you need those 2 card slots. I've really enjoyed having this camera back because I had sold it to a friend and I bought it back a few months back, and yeah, you know what? Given all those updates, this camera really isn't that far away from the Z6 II. The autofocus on this camera is still very good. It's not great, it's not the best on the market, but I think it's perfectly passable for the majority of photographers, professional or amateur. Yes, there's some things it's not going to excel at. It might sometimes get autofocus wrong, but in most situations, it really does cope surprisingly well. And also, another thing worth mentioning is the weight of this combination isn't too bad either. It's surprisingly hand-holdable. Even at 200mm, this isn't going to feel bad. You can shoot with one hand if you need to. You have an adjustable screen if you need to take shots low down. It makes it nice and simple. And overall, it's a quick camera, I think, to learn and use. There are a couple of things you may want to look out for. One is this does only have one memory card slot, and when it launched, it was only compatible with XQD memory cards. Now, if your camera has firmware number 2.2 or above, you can use Compact Flash Express cards, so CF Express cards. However, if it doesn't, you need an XQD card to update it to that number. So do bear that in mind. If you buy this camera in a CF Express card and it has a version below 2.2, chances are it won't work and you're going to have to buy an XQD card to do the update. Also, just double check that the mechanism for this tilt flip screen works well. There aren't too many problems with it, but I have noticed a few people that have had ones that don't work as well as they did. So that's worth looking out for. And obviously check the EVF, the electronic viewfinder, to make sure that works well as well. Generally though, this is a pretty good combination. It's very, very durable. It's able to deal with some dust and some mild moisture as well. Obviously don't go getting it hugely wet, but it will cope with it. And overall, I think that it's the right mix of full manual control if you want it, or complete auto control if you prefer that. It allows you to make mistakes and learn, and it doesn't break the bank in the process. So if you do want to go full frame, but you don't want to spend a huge amount in advance, I really recommend the Nikon Z6 and 24-200. There are definitely worse combinations. And yeah, you cover everything from the wide angle to the telephoto. You have a camera that will shoot 4K video or take up to 12 frames per second stills. It's a great camera to use, and it's a joy to take photos or videos with it. So I hope you found this short video useful. I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the Z6 and how it really compares to the Z6 II, but as you can tell, I'm a big fan of it. If you have any other questions, pop them in the comment section below. Always happy to help. Equally, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks very much for watching. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye.